My name's Steve Pickett. I'm 57 years old. I started having some weakness in my right arm back in April and May. Noticed a little bit of a decrease in the bicep on my right arm, and met with my primary care doctor 1st of June. He noticed a lot of muscle twitching going on in my body, pretty much 24/7 all over my entire body, and sent me off to a neurologist who did some preliminary tests on me, and I ended up, he forwarded me on or sent me out to UMass Medical Center in Worcester, where I met with Dr. Robert Brown, who's you've probably heard about. He's one of the leading ALS experts in the country. And on October 30th, I was diagnosed with ALS. That was a Friday. On Tuesday, the following Tuesday, I contacted Kevin. I got his phone number through a mutual friend. I talked to Kevin on the phone for about 45 minutes, and he asked me if I could come to his house that Friday. So that Friday I came and visited Kevin and spent pretty much all morning and afternoon with him, and he shared with me all the things that he had put together with the ALS Nights and ALS ONE. I was extremely impressed by what he had to share with me, and he asked if I'd get involved or partner up with him to try to promote the ALS Nights and everything he had done to another area of Massachusetts over where I'm from, which is Brockton. So that's where we are today, and he's done a remarkable job with what he's put together. He has an incredible team working with him, and a lot of good things have happened and since then, and I've met an awful lot of nice people, and I'm fortunate to have met him and get involved with the ALS Nights.
So how did you hear about him? How did you hear about what Kevin was doing?
I actually saw Kevin either on Facebook or YouTube, and I'm not certain, but it was at a T&K family outing. I believe it was in August, before I was diagnosed, considerably before I was diagnosed with ALS. I saw him give a speech at the T&K picnic or family outing, and I was extremely impressed by what I saw. And obviously, he's a very brave and courageous individual. And somehow, when I saw that video, I just felt I was destined to meet him. And as I continued to go through testing myself, and prior to my diagnosis, I still had that belief that someday I was going to meet him, personally. And I'm very fortunate, in the one respect, I guess, to have met him, and unfortunate to have ALS as well. But it's been motivating for me to see everything he's done and his persistence to achieve a goal, a common goal that we all have.
I know it probably isn't easy to talk about, but can you share a little bit about your experience of being diagnosed and what you have gone through personally?
Yeah, I guess even though we all study this, when we come up with ailments, we go on Dr. Google and check and try to compare our symptoms to what potentially it could be. You're following along with the doctors because there's no one test to determine if you have ALS or not. It's a process of elimination. So there's multiple tests that have to be done along the way to rule out any other possibilities. So I've had a brain MRI was done, a neck MRI was done, a CAT scan was done of my lungs and spine. More blood tests than I can possibly remember or imagine, vial after vial after vial of blood. So it's through that process of elimination that they narrow down what you have until they get it down to a couple of possibilities that are left, and from there they determine which of those motor neuron diseases you have. And in my case, they've made the determination that it was ALS, and so they do the nerve conductive test, EMGs, which are more electrical muscle tests, and that's how they basically determine what you have. And even though it's a possibility, it's never really hits you until the doctor tells you that, I'm sorry to inform you that you have ALS. Then it really hits you, and I guess that was on October 30th, which was 6 weeks ago, roughly. The most difficult part of that was having to break the news to my children. I have 3 children, as does Kevin, a son and twin daughters. That's the part that affects me the most.
You need to take a break.
Yeah, just for a second.
No, no, I understand.
Anytime I talk about my kids and ALS, it's a challenge.
I get that.
I feel worse for them than I do for myself, to be quite honest. And the only thing worse than me having it would be one of them would have it.
Yeah.
And
How old are they?
my son's 28, and my twin daughters are 26. I'm very proud of them, as any dad would be. They've done very well, and they're great kids. I couldn't ask or be blessed any more than I am, as far as it relates to my children. Oh wow! And it's tough that I'm not going to be there for them down the road and for their kids, because I think I could have made a difference in their children's lives too. And, that really hits home with me. I'm sorry that that it bothers me, but I would have given anything to have been able to help and see grandkids, I guess. But I have a lot to be thankful for at the same time, and I am thankful for what I have and what I've accomplished, and I'm thankful for my beautiful children. And so even though I got dealt a bad hand here too, I guess, I have been blessed in my life, immensely blessed. Blessed to have seen all the things that I've seen and traveled all the places I've traveled and met all the wonderful people that I've met, and to have 3 beautiful children. A lot of people aren't that fortunate, and I am. And I try to focus on that and focus on the positive things that have happened. And, you know, I guess the cloud behind the silver lining of having ALS is that I've met some pretty incredible people, generous and compassionate beyond words, which is extremely meaningful to me. And, you know, we see so many bad things in life, especially on news broadcasts and things like that. It's really quite remarkable to go out and see how kind and caring complete strangers can be when they find or see somebody that is in a situation like I am and like Kevin is. And it's really opened my eyes to how many good folks are out there. And there's a lot more good folks than not so good, in my opinion. So there's certainly silver linings behind the clouds.
That's a great attitude. Did you have much knowledge or familiarity with ALS before any of this? Did you know much about the disease?
No, I did not, and I think that most people probably find themselves in the same position I was in. I was familiar with the Ice Bucket Challenge, and I had heard of ALS obviously prior to that, Lou Gehrig's disease, but I never really fully understood what it was. I knew that it was fatal, but I wasn't quite certain exactly what it was, and I think the Ice Bucket Challenge did some remarkable things and was a tremendous fundraiser. But even though I knew it was for ALS, I never really studied it at that point in time. So I didn't have a knowledge of exactly how it progressed, what it was, what caused it, any of those things until I started the testing that they were doing on me prior to even my diagnosis. Then I started to study it. And I said, man, if there's one disease I don't want to have, it's ALS. I'll take any one of those other things out there. I'll even take more than one of them, because the other things, the other possibilities that it could have been are treatable. Some of them are even curable. But with ALS, there was no treatment. There is no cure. And it's just you sit back and allow it to progress, and the doctors sit back and allow it to progress, and that's basically all they can test you for. You come back every few months and they check your progression. But there's nothing that they can do to stop it or treat it. And I guess as I studied it, not even knowing that I had it, and became more aware of just how brutal a disease it is, I can think of no worse way to leave this planet than to go down this road. And it's a shame because there's going to be treatments and cures out there. And it's funny because I was talking to Kevin just last night, and I said, did you ever wonder what it would be like for us today if somebody had done this 10 years ago? If somebody had started 10 years ago what you started, where would we be today? And we both believe in the same thing, and that is that there would be a treatment and or a cure for us today if somebody had done this 10 years ago. And we truly believe that 10 years from now, there'll be treatments and cures for ALS, just as there have been and are for so many other diseases. And it's too late for Kevin and I, and we realize that, but if we can do something to change it down the road for other folks so that they don't have to deal with what we're dealing with today, and they don't have to put their families through what we have and are ultimately going to put our families through, then it'll all be worthwhile.
Is that what you heard? Is that what drew you to Kevin? Did you hear him talking about that and you realize that there was something you could do with this time?
When I heard him speak at that Teen K function, family outing, I just was impressed by his courageousness. I guess how courageous he was to stand there and take a stand, say that he wasn't going to take it laying down. And I guess I kind of saw a little of myself in Kevin and felt that we had an awful lot in common in terms of the way that we've addressed problems in our lives in the past. And, you know, I like to believe that that because I saw some of myself and what Kevin was doing and the stand he was taking, I was drawn to that. And I just believed that if I was in the same boat, I'd want to do the same thing. And ultimately, I did end up in the same boat, unfortunately. And I'm just glad that I was able to make a connection with him and join forces with him to help try and make a difference, because for the first several months of the ALS nights and ALS ONE, from a patient standpoint, he stood alone. He certainly has a tremendous team around him, but from somebody suffering from the disease, he was by himself. And when I talked to him, there was no doubt in my mind that I was going to join forces with him as long as he wanted me to, and he asked me to, so here we are today.
I know you've compared yourselves to the Red Sox, the 2004 Red Sox. I've heard a little bit about that.
You heard that story, huh?
Can you retell that story?
Sure, I'd be happy to. It actually really was part of a speech that I gave at Lombardo's, and it had to do with Curt Schilling, who his entire life, professional career, has been a strong supporter of ALS. And when he was with the Red Sox, he came over to the Red Sox in 2004. The Red Sox made the playoffs, and a reporter asked Curt Schilling what did he think the Red Sox chances were in the playoffs to win a World Series, since they hadn't done it in 86 years. And Curt Schilling responded with 3 simple words. He said, "Why not us?" Well, that kind of went on as a rallying point for the Boston Red Sox, and they had shirts that said "Why not us" on them. I still remember them from 2004. And I could tell you the story if you'd like to hear how it went. I'll be happy to share it with you. Well, in 2004, in the playoffs, the Red Sox played the great New York Yankees, who had won more world championships than anybody else in Major League Baseball history. And in that series against the New York Yankees, the Yankees won the first 3 games. Now, no team in Major League history had ever come back in a 7-game series from a 3-0 deficit. But the Red Sox rallied around the battle cry, "Why not us?" And they won the next 4 straight. Beyond that, they went on to win the World Series for the first time in 86 years. And I often say that my dad never had a chance to see the Boston Red Sox win a World Series. And I did in 2004, and more since then. But the thing that I remembered about that was when Curt Schilling said, "Why not us?" And I said, if the Red Sox can do what's never been done before in the history of Major League Baseball by coming back from a 3-0 deficit, and then go on to win the World Series, which they hadn't done in 86 years on top of that, that's a pretty remarkable run. I'm thinking that maybe, just maybe, we can do something that's never been done as well. And that's find a treatment and/or a cure for ALS. And I believe that that's what the ALS Nights and ALS ONE is going to do. And when I was talking to the group of people that were there in the crowd, I said, when we do that, we're all going to be part of it. And as Curt Schilling said, "Why not us?" That was pretty much the gist of the conversation. I gave you the abbreviated version, but that was it. And I believe that, why not us? So that was how that all broke down.
Good stuff. Anybody else- Anything else?
I just a quick question of, like, how do you feel today? What is it, how do you feel on a day-to-day basis of
That's a very, very good question. In terms of how I feel, mine started in my right arm, and I've lost the bicep muscles and most of the strength in my right arm and my right hand, and that's where it has began. It's a tricky disease in that it doesn't progress the same way in all people. They don't know if it's going to go from my right arm to my left arm, or my right arm to my leg, or my right arm to somewhere else, and it feels like it's moving to my left arm. But it can go in any direction until it ultimately affects your mouth and then finally your breathing. So they're uncertain of the direction it's going to progress and the speed with which it's going to progress, because it's different with everybody as well. Some people have a slower progression than others, and some people a faster progression. And sometimes you can start fast and it'll slow down, or it can start slow and it can speed up. Fatigue is a big issue today. Feel tired an awful lot, and weakness is starting to spread into my legs right now. So again, I'm uncertain like which direction this is going to go as we go forward, but it can weigh on you physically, and it certainly can weigh on you mentally, because psychologically you don't know where it's going, and you become much more in tune with anything that your body feels. So most of the time we would dismiss, a muscle spasm or a muscle cramp or a little tenderness or weakness here and there. We would just dismiss it because it's just part of getting older, or you hurt it at work, and you just move on from there. But now you have to be more in tune, right? Being in the condition that I have ALS, I'm much more in tune with things that go on in my body, and at the same time I can't allow my mind to psychologically play games on me either. And you don't want to think that you feel something that you really don't feel. So the physical aspect is certainly the major part of it, but it weighs on you psychologically as well. And it's a constant struggle day to day, to keep focused and keep positive. That's really the major thing, is to stay upbeat, stay positive. Try to look at all the things that you can do, not what you can't do anymore. And the ALS Nights and being involved with Kevin is a very positive aspect in my life today, something that I am glad that I am involved in, and something to focus my energy and efforts on. Because idle time is really when your mind can play tricks on you, and so the busier the better. for as long as you can. I mean, that's really the key. But, you know,
Is there any one thing for someone that maybe is hearing this story for the first time, or that is learning about ALS for the first time? Is there anything you would tell them, or any?
I guess I guess that the ALS has no boundaries. 10% of the cases are hereditary and 90% are not. So nobody is excluded from the possibility of coming down with ALS. It is a very rare disease, but any one of our family members could be affected, any one of our friends could be affected, any one of our relatives could be affected. So I would just like everybody to be aware that there is no more brutal disease that I'm aware of, and there's no worse way that I could ever imagine dying than from ALS. It's a scary, scary thing because your brain is still 100% functional. Your sense where you can still feel things, even though you can't move your arms or legs or sometimes speak anymore. You're fully aware of what's going on around you, yet you're totally incapable of doing anything about it, or in the end, being able to communicate about it and finally being able to breathe. So it's I don't know, almost barbaric that we haven't come up with a treatment or a cure prior to this for this unbelievably gruesome disease. So if I can pass anything on to everybody else, it would be to be aware, to do something that I didn't do actually prior to studying this, and that's go out and read about it. Go out on, there's videos out there that'll show you just how bad this disease is as it progresses. And I think that if more people were aware, there'd be a greater public outcry for people to step up and fund something that's simply underfunded. And the doctors will tell you that if they have the money, they'll find the treatment and they'll find the cure. And they're saying within 4 years or less, which is a very, very short period of time for something that really hasn't gotten the attention that it's deserved in the past. And I'm glad that it's going to get the attention now. And it's all up to all of us to continue to carry that message to see that happens, because then our mission will have been successful. And as I indicated, it's too late for Kevin and I, but it's not too late for those down the road that haven't been diagnosed yet. And I think that a couple of stats that'll maybe be a little bit eye-opening is, since Lou Gehrig died of this disease, 465,000 other Americans have died for it. And it's projected that today, 500,000 people that are alive in the United States today are going to die of ALS. So even though it's small, if you look at the annual number of people diagnosed in the United States is typically in the 6,000 a year range. If you consider 500,000 Americans alive today are going to die from ALS, those numbers are very large. And 465,000 people since Lou Gehrig had it. That's an awful lot of folks too. So right, those two groups are 1 million people. That's a big number. And with everybody's help and everybody's support, they will find a treatment and they will find a cure for this. Again, so people down the road that have yet to be diagnosed won't have to deal with what I have to deal with or what Kevin has to deal with. I guess that's what I'd like to make everybody aware of, that this is fixable. This is something that can be repaired. It just needs funding to do it. That's all the doctors need. And it's a shame that in today's world, they can't come up with the money to make that happen. It seems so simple. We fund crazy things with astronomical amounts of money, and we can't fund something to truly do something positive for mankind. And that just seems, I don't know, unfathomable to me. I I know this is going to sound crazy, but I look at this military balloon that escaped and went down somewhere down in Virginia, and they spent $1 billion with a B, on this military balloon. And I'm thinking, give me 10% of that, and they can cure ALS. I mean, if you think about it, it seems nuts to me, crazy. You know, with $100 million, 10% of that $1 billion balloon that broke away, 10%. And the doctors will tell you that they could find a treatment, a cure for ALS. It just doesn't seem like that's right. I mean, it's the way I feel. I mean, and so much other waste out there that if we had the money for a really worthwhile cause, the geniuses of this planet would solve this problem, just as they did with AIDS. I mean, I recall AIDS back 15 or 20 years ago was all the rage. It was going to wipe out mankind, and it was every time you turned on the 6 o'clock news or the national news every night, it was the lead story for weeks and weeks and weeks. All of a sudden, the people came out of the woodwork. The pharmaceutical companies jumped on board. They started to invest heavily in AIDS research, and the celebrities came out and they ran AIDS concerts and AIDS benefits, and they did some remarkable things, but they did it with money, and they raised a tremendous amount of money, and they gave that money to the researchers that did their job exceptionally well, and they came up with treatments that essentially have made HIV no longer a death sentence. I mean, obviously, it's still a debilitating disease, but they've done something to fix that and take that off of that list of things you don't want to get. They've made it treatable. They've come up with the treatments, and it's all because of money. And ALS is no different, in my opinion. It just lacks the funding because it's not mainstream. And,
what is the kind of the most positive news or potential that's on the horizon in regards to this group, like you and Kevin and your group and this research and the efforts of it?
I think the most positive thing that so far has come out of this is that in the past, all the groups have been kind of marching to the beat of their own drummer. They've been doing all things independent of one another, and they haven't shared what they've gained, whether it's successful or it's unsuccessful. So there's been a tremendous amount of duplication of effort where a group over here might be testing one specific drug and they find out that it's not going to work, and they don't tell this group over here who later tests the same drug. So now you have a duplication of a failure. So you have lost time, lost money, lost resources, energy wasted. And there's been no teamwork. There's been no pulling the rope the same way. Let's all pull the rope in the same direction here, and we'll make advances much more quickly. So I think one of the biggest positives that I've seen out of the ALS ONE group is that the doctors and the researchers are now going to make a commitment to work in conjunction with one another, work collectively, share information, share successes and failures, so that they can advance this process much, much more quickly than they have in the past. And that's one of the